The second thing that I heard the composers tell me was that theory was an important part of their background. And when I was preparing, I thought, you know, if there's one thing I could say about this entire group of musicians, it would be that theory is probably very important to you. Yes? Okay, and most of you teach it, and you teach it well. But actually, I think that if you will do one little extra step, and this is where the extra 60 seconds comes in, I think that you'll be able to relate it a little bit better to creativity. And the point is to relate theory to composition. Now think about music in terms of a triangle for a minute. Music and theory are on two different parts of the triangle, and we're always drawing theory from music, right? That's where the theory comes from. And in essence, music is basically made up of a bunch of different theoretical concepts, although it's much more than that. But you obviously relate them back to each other. You introduce a fourth and you say, now Susan, would you show me the fourth, the first fourth that you see in the music? We do this, right? Okay. But it's almost as if we forget that there's actually a third part of that. Those theory concepts did not become music by themselves. The third part is composition. Somebody had to put those theory concepts together to create a piece of music. We make sure that the student can see the concept, hear the concept, play the concept. Why not give them the chance to create with the concept? So that's my suggestion, is give them a chance to create with the concept, and they will understand the theory concept much better than if you're just going over these things with them. If there's one point I want you to take away today, it would be this one. Let me show you how to do this. The first thing I would say is focus on the sound. If you'll focus on the sound, it'll be the perfect position that you need to be in order to relate theory to composition. For instance, half steps. Very early in piano study, we study half steps. So play half steps for your students. And you say, okay, what does that sound like? Okay? You know, right? I asked my 5-year-old, never had a piano lesson with him before, and he said, that sounds creepy. And he got really excited, right? Because kids love creepy music. So then you say, well, then go home and why don't you make up just a little song, make sure you put the word little in there, using half steps. And then next week when they come back, you will know whether they understand half steps, won't you? They'll show you. They'll demonstrate it. Same thing with whole steps. If you ask a student, what do whole steps sound like? What do they say? Creepy, yes? Dreamy. Anything else? Mysterious, space, water. They might come up with all different kinds of things. Whatever their answer is the right answer, okay? But then you ask them to go home and create something with whole steps. If they answered space, say, well, go home and make some space music for me with whole steps, okay? You can do this with every single theory concept that you introduce. Fourths. Okay, so you introduce one fourth. Why not stack the fourths? Suddenly you have chordal harmony and you have a really interesting sound. Okay? Maybe come up with an interesting ending at the end of those stacked fourths, because stacked fourths tend to build excitement if you let them go up the keyboard. So stacked fourths are really helpful, and then, like I said, you'll understand whether or not they understand. Fifths, of course, quintal harmony. Everybody loves quintal harmony. Just tell them to go home and improvise using fifths. They can stack the fifths. They don't have to stack the fifths. But the idea is just to use the fifths so that they can understand the fifths better. Seventh chords are some of my favorite. And, of course, you don't really introduce this until a little bit later. And so I'm not keeping any of these concepts to, beginning students. If you say, okay, introduce the major seventh chord and the minor seventh chord, you don't really have to talk to them about every single chord that you're going to use here in a minute, but you could say, okay, why don't you reharmonize Twinkle Twinkle Little Star using the seventh chord? Okay, it's a beautiful sort of it's just, you don't have to necessarily know how to do this yourself. You could suggest that they do it, and then you could practice it that next week. And make sure you know it before they come back and say, I don't know how to do it. Okay, when you're introducing swing, this is easy. Just say, next week, why don't you play your scale the regular way, and then swing it. And as soon as they start swinging something, they start moving, and it's just something that you can apply immediately. The tritone's one of my favorites. Of course, we don't usually talk about this till later either, but it's very creepy sounding. So tell your older students when you introduce it, why don't you make a little motive? I mean, you don't want to make an entire piece probably on the tritone, but make just a little motive using the tritone, and they'll have a lot of fun with that. So, obviously, relating theory to composition is one of my favorite things, and I hope you can see how it just takes 60 seconds. It's just one more extension of what you're already doing. If you just ask them to make a little piece or a little thing using that particular motive, that's all you have to say, and sometimes they just go off with it, and most of the time they do that. Sometimes you might have to suggest something, but most of the time they just take off with it, and it's a lot of fun.